Hey everyone, Mr. DVB here, and welcome to the second installment of my Road to PS5 series. Last episode, I discussed my top 10 favorite games of the PS4 generation, and in today's video, I'm going to be discussing the games that I'll be picking up at launch for the PS5 this November. In my opinion, the PlayStation 5 has a pretty good list of launch titles, which is nice to see since the previous generation had some pretty lackluster games at first. This time around, it seems like we're getting a good handful of first-party exclusives, some of them available on PS4, and a great catalog of third-party games. At first, my plan was to pick up 2 games at launch, most likely 1 single-player and 1 multiplayer game. This way, I would have a good balance of content at my disposal, but things recently changed, and now I have 5 games as well as an additional controller pre-ordered. The first game I'll talk about, which was always my plan to get first, is Spider-Man Miles Morales, a sequel/spin-off to Insomniac's 2018 release Spider-Man game, which was a massive success and made it in at the number 4 spot in my top 10 PS4 games list. I'm really looking forward to seeing how Miles' story will be continued in this game, as we're now seeing him fully take on the role of a second Spider-Man. Initially, I didn't know what to expect from this title. I figured it wouldn't be a full-length game like the previous one, and its reduced price point certainly assured that. That left me a bit worried as to what the quality of the game would be, as all of the DLCs for the 2018 Spider-Man game were very mediocre in my opinion. But now that we've seen more and more footage, I think Insomniac is definitely putting in the work to make this a great title. Visually, it looks really impressive. You can play it in either a 4K 30fps mode with ray tracing, or a 4K 60fps mode if you prefer smoother frame rate. I'm excited to try out Miles' abilities and see just how much of the PS5's new hardware this game will be taking advantage of. So far, I've noticed an insane difference in time between this game and the original PS4 version when it comes to exiting locations and heading back into the open world, which by the way looks beautiful with the winter setting this time around. Otherwise, I've heard some pretty promising things as far as the DualSense controller features go. From what I've heard, the further towards the end of your swing you get, the tighter the trigger gets, and you'll feel more friction, something that is sure to add a nice amount of immersion to the game. The title will be available with an Ultimate Edition at launch, which will include a remaster of the 2018 game taking advantage of the PS5 hardware, with 60fps and ray tracing inclusion, as well as speed improvements from the SSD. I personally pre-ordered the Ultimate Edition as I would love to replay the 2018 version with these welcomed upgrades.
Let's go! Hey Pete, headed your way. Did I miss the convoy?
The second game I want to talk about that I'm picking up is Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. I myself am more of a Battlefield person. I've always preferred the much larger open maps, tons of vehicles, map destruction, graphics, and match pacing of those games. Over the past few years, I've found myself purchasing less and less Call of Duty games, and the ones that I do get, I spend roughly 10 hours in multiplayer with before never touching again.
I don't want to play with you anymore.
That being said, Cold War is the first time since Black Ops 3 that I've actually been genuinely excited for a Call of Duty game. And no, it's not just because it's a Black Ops game, which happens to be my favorite of the Call of Duty franchises, but rather because I tried out the alpha and both betas, and I genuinely have loved what I've played so far, which, interestingly enough, is not the general consensus I've heard from the fanbase. Everything here from a gameplay standpoint just feels great to me. The time to kill feels well balanced, the gunplay looks and feels smooth, I love the domination mode with increased player count, and I've already picked out my favorite weapons. After the most recent beta ended, I reinstalled Black Ops 4 and it feels entirely different from a gunplay standpoint. I found myself doing terrible in online matches, so I definitely feel like Cold War is more for me. Again, this is a franchise that, while I've managed to pick up all of the titles for since 2009 besides 2, I just don't spend a lot of time with anymore. But I can already see that changing with this game, as I'm really liking what I've played so far. The game itself doesn't look all that great. I find that the colors are pretty washed out and the game looks rather uninspired, something that I find to be pretty common with Call of Duty titles, but the next-gen versions could see a big buff in that regard. Otherwise, I'm really excited for the inclusion of 120fps on the PS5 version, as I've never played a game with that frame rate before, so it'll certainly be something to see. I'm also glad that there's a campaign this time around, something that Black Ops 4 was severely lacking, and something that Black Ops 3 heavily disappointed me with. It's nice that we'll be seeing some familiar faces, as well as the return of the Black Ops 1 era. When it comes to zombies, which has always been my favorite aspect of these games, I'm hoping Treyarch can deliver this time around, as I was really disappointed with Black Ops 4's DLCs. Overall, this is the first time in a while that I've been looking forward to getting a new Call of Duty. Next up is a title I was sure not to miss, and that's Cyberpunk 2077, arguably the most anticipated game of this year. I won't lie, I haven't really been blown away by anything shown so far. I love the setting and the idea behind the game, but besides the developer, I haven't heard or seen anything that truly excites me as much as everyone else seems to be. That being said, I'm still incredibly excited to experience a game of this scale so close to launch that will definitely assure me playing many hours. The game isn't being released on PS5 on disc, so if you want to go the physical route like myself, all you have to do is insert the PS4 disc into the PS5 console, and you'll immediately take advantage of speed improvements. Sadly, all of the visual upgrades to the game to make it a more next-gen experience aren't arriving until sometime in 2021. The lack of these improvements is a bit disappointing for me, as I rarely tend to completely revisit games of this size after completing them. As far as the version I pre-ordered goes, I went with the basic standard edition from Best Buy, which comes with one of 3 exclusive steelbooks. Another game I've pre-ordered is Sackboy: A Big Adventure. Back in the PS3 days, one of my favorite franchises was the Little Big Planet games. I always loved the visual style and creative freedom they gave the players when it came to creating their own levels. A Big Adventure is taking a different route this time around and will instead be completely focused on being a platformer without the inclusion of level creation, something that has turned off a few fans. While I would love to see a 4th game in the style of the previous entries, I'm all for a different experience for this series. Everything I've seen so far looks really promising, and the game will also be available on PS4, but the next-gen version will be taking full advantage of the PS5 hardware. The last game I'll be discussing that I pre-ordered is the new remaster of Demon's Souls. My history with these types of games is pretty minimal and only consists of the first few hours of Bloodborne. Simply put, I find these games very difficult, which is obviously the point, but I never found myself getting into Bloodborne as I found the game did a poor job of explaining how its system works to new players. Normally, I probably wouldn't even pick up a game like this, but holy crap do the graphics ever look incredible. I wouldn't say the Souls games have ever been known for their graphics, certainly not for character models, but this game is without a doubt one of the most visually appealing I have ever seen. The lighting is mind-blowing with insane reflections on metal armor, and one particular boss moment that blew my mind. This is without a doubt the most next-gen looking game I've seen so far, and while it'll probably be a major pain to get through, I'm willing to give it a shot just for those graphics and that awesome soundtrack alone. So there you have it. Those are all of the PS5 games I'll be picking up at launch. Now, since I'm Mr. DVB and I love to rank things, I've decided to throw in a quick little ranking of these games based on my current excitement level. Call of Duty above Cyberpunk? What the fuck?